Oakley Dixon had worked the same 40 acres of land outside Riverbrook for nearly 30 years. His calloused hands told the story of countless seasons, planting, tending, and harvesting crops that barely kept him afloat. The small farmhouse, where he lived, needed repairs he couldn't afford, its weathered boards creaking with each passing storm. But despite his struggles, Oakley possessed something money couldn't buy: the unwavering loyalty of his horse, Mercer. Mercer wasn't just any horse. The 17-year-old chestnut quarter horse had been with Oakley since he was a colt. Together they had weathered droughts, floods, and the slow economic death of small farming. Mercer pulled the plow when Oakley couldn't afford to repair his tractor, carried him to town when his truck broke down, and provided silent companionship during the long, lonely evenings after Oakley's wife passed away. "You're all the family I got left, old boy," Oakley would often murmur while brushing Mercer's coat until it gleamed like polished copper in the sunset. The arrival of Brantley Harrington III to Riverbrook changed everything. The tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley had made billions developing social media algorithms and decided the quaint rural community would be the perfect location for his newest luxury estate. He bought up 3,000 acres of prime farmland, displacing several families who couldn't resist his generous offers. Oakley, however, refused to sell. His land held the memories of his wife, the graves of his parents, and the only life he'd ever known. No amount of money could replace that. "Mr. Dixon," Harrington had said during their first meeting, his designer boots unsuited for the muddy farmyard, "I'm prepared to offer you 10 times what this property is worth." Oakley had simply shaken his head. Not interested. Harrington's pleasant demeanor had cracked momentarily. "Everyone has a price." "Not me," Oakley had replied, turning back to his chores. As weeks passed, Harrington's massive estate rose from the earth like an alien spacecraft that had landed amid the cornfields and pastures. Local contractors were replaced by specialists, brought in from the city. The construction continued day and night, disrupting the peaceful countryside with constant noise and light. Then came the riding academy. Harrington, it seemed, had developed a sudden interest in horses, specifically in competitive show jumping. He imported expensive European warmbloods and hired a renowned trainer to prepare for the regional circuit. One evening, as Oakley fed Mercer his nightly apple, he noticed the horse seemed distracted, his ears constantly pivoting toward Harrington's property. "What's the matter, boy?" Oakley asked, following Mercer's gaze across the fields where floodlights illuminated Harrington's massive indoor riding arena. Little did Oakley know that his quiet refusal to sell had planted a seed of obsession in Harrington's mind. A dark fixation that would soon target the one thing Oakley cherished most. The trouble began on a Tuesday when Mercer disappeared. Oakley woke to find the barn door ajar and his faithful companion gone. Panic seized him as he called out across the fields. Mercer had never wandered off before. After hours of searching, Oakley found hoofprints leading toward a break in his fence, directly across from Harrington's property. The wire had been cleanly cut, not broken. Someone had deliberately created an opening. With his heart hammering against his ribs, Oakley marched toward the gleaming gates of Harrington's estate. The security guard, a former military man named Vaughn, stopped him with a raised hand. "Sorry, Mr. Dixon. No visitors allowed without an appointment." "My horse is missing," Oakley said, his voice tight with worry. "I need to check if he wandered onto the property." Vaughn shook his head. "Mr. Harrington doesn't allow unscheduled guests. I can take your number and have someone call you." Before Oakley could protest further, he heard the familiar whinny, Mercer's distinctive call. It came from beyond the decorative hedges that surrounded Harrington's stables. "That's him!" Oakley tried to push past, but Vaughn blocked his path. "Sir, I can't let you in. Those are the rules." For 3 agonizing days, Oakley tried everything to reach Harrington. He called the estate repeatedly, left messages with staff, and even contacted the sheriff's office. Deputy Loretta Fleming sympathized, but explained that without evidence of theft, there was little she could do against someone as powerful as Harrington. "It's likely your horse just wandered onto his property," she said gently. "Give them time to respond." On the fourth day, Oakley received a hand-delivered letter. The expensive cream-colored stationery bore the Harrington corporate logo. "Dear Mr. Dixon," it read, "we regretfully inform you that an unidentified horse was found trespassing on our property. As per county ordinance, we have claimed temporary custody of the animal. Should you wish to reclaim it, please provide proof of ownership and pay the standard boarding fee of $2,500. Sincerely, the office of Brantley Harrington III." Oakley's hands trembled. The amount represented nearly all his savings. He recognized the tactic for what it was, another attempt to pressure him into selling his land. That night, lying in bed, Oakley heard the sound that would change everything: a horse screaming in pain. The sound cut through the darkness, distinctive and unmistakable. He knew immediately it was Mercer. Without hesitation, Oakley grabbed his flashlight and wire cutters. The moon provided just enough light as he made his way across the fields toward Harrington's estate. This time, he wouldn't be stopped by gates or guards. He cut through the perimeter fence at a blind spot between security cameras and slipped onto the manicured grounds. The stables at Harrington Estate were unlike anything Oakley had ever seen. Polished mahogany doors, brass fixtures, and floors, so clean you could eat off them. It was more hotel than horse barn. Oakley moved silently down the center aisle, searching for Mercer among the dozen or so elite show horses. He found him in the last stall. The sight made his blood run cold. Mercer stood with his head hanging low, a far cry from his usual proud posture. Fresh welts marked his sides, and a cruel training device known as a rollkur was strapped to his head, forcing his neck into an unnatural position that show judges rewarded, but caused immense pain to the horse. Most disturbing was the bloody foam at his mouth, evidence of a harsh bit and rough handling. "Oh, Mercer," Oakley whispered, his voice breaking as he unlatched the stall door. The horse recognized him immediately, nickering softly despite his obvious distress. Oakley quickly removed the cruel equipment, his fingers shaking with both fury and tenderness as he assessed the damage. "What are you doing in my stables?" The voice echoed through the barn. Harrington stood at the entrance, dressed in riding breeches and boots despite the late hour. Behind him loomed his personal trainer, Gustav, a stern-faced man with cold eyes. "You stole my horse," Oakley said, stepping protectively in front of Mercer. Harrington laughed. "Stole? That nag wandered onto my property. I'm simply holding him until proper compensation is arranged. You cut my fence, and look what you've done to him." Oakley gestured to Mercer's wounds. "Gustav is preparing him for competition," Harrington said dismissively. "That animal has potential, unlike his owner. With proper training, he might actually be worth something." Gustav stepped forward. "The horse resists discipline. Some animals require firmer methods." "Firmer methods?" Oakley echoed, noticing for the first time the riding crop in Gustav's hand, its end stained dark with what could only be blood. "You've been beating him." "Don't be dramatic," Harrington said. "This is professional training, something a simple farmer wouldn't understand." "I understand cruelty when I see it," Oakley replied, his voice dangerously quiet. Harrington sighed theatrically. "Vaughn!" he called, and his security guard appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Dixon here is trespassing. Remove him." "The horse comes with me," Oakley insisted. "The horse stays until you pay the fee or sell me your property." Harrington's smile was cold. Considerate motivation to finally make the sensible choice. As Vaughn approached, Oakley saw Gustav move toward Mercer with the crop raised. Something primal and protective surged within him, a tsunami of rage that had been building since his first encounter with Harrington's entitled arrogance. What happened next would later become legend in Riverbrook. They said afterward that Oakley Dixon moved like a man half his age. Before Vaughn could reach him, Oakley had crossed the distance to Gustav and caught the trainer's wrist mid-strike. With surprising strength born of decades of physical labor, he twisted until the crop clattered to the ground. "You will not touch." "Him again," Oakley growled. Gustav, trained in European martial arts, recovered quickly and threw a punch that caught Oakley on the jaw. The farmer stumbled back, but didn't fall. Instead, he wiped a trickle of blood from his lip and advanced again. What Gustav didn't understand, what Harrington could never comprehend, was that Oakley Dixon had spent his life wrestling calves, breaking wild horses, and lifting hay bales that weighed as much as a man. His strength wasn't sculpted in a gym, it was forged through survival. When Oakley's fist connected with Gustav's sternum, the trainer collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Vaughn rushed forward but hesitated when Oakley turned to face him. "This isn't worth your paycheck, son," Oakley said quietly. Something in Vaughn's eyes changed. A flash of recognition, perhaps, or moral calculation. He stepped back, hands raised. "Mr. Harrington pays me to keep out trespassers," he said carefully. "He doesn't pay me enough to fight a man defending his animal." Harrington's face contorted with rage. "I'll have you fired for this, Vaughn." "Add it to my severance package," Vaughn replied, then turned and walked out of the stable. Now it was just Oakley, Harrington, and the groaning Gustav. Mercer watched from his stall, ears forward with interest. "You're making a serious mistake," Harrington said, backing away slowly. "I have connections you can't imagine. One call and your little farm will be rezoned, taxed, and regulated until you're begging me to buy it." "Maybe so," Oakley acknowledged, advancing steadily. "But right now, it's just you and me." Harrington's back hit the wall. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in his eyes as he realized his money couldn't shield him in this moment. "What do you want?" he asked, voice rising in pitch. "An apology," Oakley said. "To Mercer." Harrington laughed nervously. "You want me to apologize? To a horse?" Oakley nodded solemnly. "And you're going to mean it." What happened next would be disputed in various accounts. Some said Harrington tried to run. Others claimed he reached for a nearby pitchfork. What everyone agreed on was the outcome. Brantley, Harrington III, billionaire tech mogul and would-be equestrian, received the most thorough thrashing of his privileged life at the hands of a 60-year-old farmer. The story spread through Riverbrook like wildfire. By morning, everyone had heard how Oakley Dixon had carried his beloved horse, Mercer, out of Harrington Estate. The billionaire himself stumbling behind them, bruised and defeated, mumbling apologies to the horse with each step. Deputy Fleming arrived at Oakley's farm by mid-morning, her expression a mixture of official concern and poorly hidden amusement. "Mr. Harrington has filed charges," she said, leaning against her patrol car. "Trespassing, assault, theft of property." Oakley, tending to Mercer's wounds in the morning sun, simply nodded. "I figured as much." "Thing is," Fleming continued, removing her hat, "seems every potential witness has suddenly developed amnesia. Vaughn claims he saw nothing. The stable hands were all mysteriously absent. Even Gustav is keeping quiet, probably embarrassed about being overpowered by a man twice his age." Oakley allowed himself a small smile. "And then there's the matter of these." Fleming held up her phone, showing Oakley photographs of Mercer's injuries, the cruel training devices, and documentation of how the fence had been cut from Harrington's side. "Anonymous tip?" Oakley asked. Fleming nodded. "Very thorough one, too. Enough evidence of animal cruelty to launch an investigation into Harrington's entire operation." 2 weeks later, the charges against Oakley were quietly dropped. The County Animal Welfare Department conducted a surprise inspection of Harrington's stables, resulting in substantial fines and a revocation of his newly acquired equestrian competition licenses. Most surprisingly, Harrington's land development permits were suddenly under intensive review, with environmental impact studies that would delay construction for years. It seemed the local officials, long tired of being bullied by outside money, had found their courage. 1 month after the incident, Oakley received an unexpected visitor. Vaughn, no longer in his security uniform, stood at the farmhouse door. "Mr. Harrington's leaving," he said without preamble. "Selling everything and heading back to California. Says the locals are too hostile for his taste." Oakley nodded, unsurprised. "He authorized me to make you an offer," Vaughn continued. "He'll sell you back the 100 acres that border your property at agricultural value. No markup." Later that evening, as a gentle summer rain fell on the tin roof of his porch, Oakley sat beside Mercer, who was enjoying the fresh grass of what was now their expanded pasture. The horse's wounds were healing, his spirit returning day by day. "We did all right, didn't we, old boy?" Oakley murmured, stroking Mercer's neck. As if in answer, Mercer nudged him gently with his nose, then returned to grazing, secure in the knowledge that some bonds are stronger than money, and some men, no matter how humble their circumstances, will never be bought or broken. In Riverbrook, they still tell the story of how Oakley Dixon, a simple farmer with nothing but his dignity and love for a horse, stood against a billionaire and won. Not with lawyers or money, but with the simple, undeniable power of what was right.